welcome to our June Innovation Showcase. Thanks for turning out today. My name's Doyley. I'm the Industry Manager with ecologiQ, and along for today's showcase, my colleague Lily Rose Palmer, Senior Industry Advisor, is here also, and she'll be taking you through a bit of a presentation later on, catching up with one of our other presenters as part of our Where Are They Now segment. So to get started, although we're meeting virtually, I do want to acknowledge that we still meet on traditional lands. So for me, I'm dialing to you today from the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations. I'd like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and any First Nations people we might have with us on today's session, and also acknowledge the lands that you're dialing in from. So today we'll be talking a lot about the circular economy, being sustainable. I think, in today's dialogue, we talk about resource optimization, we talk about decarbonisation, or even other elements of regenerative and resource optimization. But for me, I think our First Nations people had it right, and they just called it caring for country. So the way that they lived with the environment in harmony, using the resources and doing it in a sustainable way for thousands of years. I always like to take stock in that when doing the acknowledgement, and have a think about that when we talk to you about some of the businesses that are here today, which I think are also doing some fantastic work towards looking after our resources and caring for country and ensuring that we can do this sustainably as we go forward. So for those who haven't come to one of these before and maybe are unfamiliar with ecologiQ, ecologiQ is a Victorian Government initiative. So it's part of the Victorian Infrastructure Delivery Authority, and it's been around it's actually our 6th year, optimizing the use of recycled materials. So the idea was that with this boom in Victorian infrastructure construction, that we should really look at our waste streams or our resources, underused resources, and convert them and use that to build our infrastructure. So it is part of that step change towards a circular economy. And the cornerstone of the ecologiQ program to date really has been that Victoria remains the first to drive and deliver a recycle first policy. So I'm really proud to mention that we recently were the winners of the IS Awards for the impact category, because the policy is one of its kind, and it does drive our construction partners to really optimize use of recycled materials when they start bidding and putting in place their procurement plans. And secondly, as they go into construction and up until completion, they actually report on the materials and volumes of recycled materials used today. So through that sort of instrument, as of this month, actually, over almost 7.5 million tonnes of recycled materials have been used by the Victorian Infrastructure Delivery projects that have Recycle First applying. And that's, we like to talk about how many MCGs that might be here in Melbourne. It's almost 3 MCGs worth of materials that have been used by our projects. So now we can't do that without the help of our industry partners and our experts. So for today's showcase, I've assembled a couple of expert personnel to be our panel. I'd like to introduce you Dr. Sven Shepakat. I hope I got that right. Dr. Sven, who's a lead engineer with DTP Core Materials. But Sven, I'll let you say hello and maybe what you hope to get out of today.
Hello, very happy to be here, and thanks for the invitation. And you got my name absolutely right, so thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Dr. Sven. And providing a bit of a rail perspective, Miles Thackeray, our material subject matter expert, engineering with Vita Rail. Miles.
Thank you, Doy, and welcome everyone, and thank you ecologiQ for putting on these great events. I'm really looking forward to it, because it just blows me away the amount of really innovative stuff that companies are doing in Victoria, and it's really exciting to be able to hear their stories and then see where we can help take them further, which would be great. So looking forward to it. Thanks, Doy.
Thanks, Miles. So just a little bit about today's format and housekeeping. You'll hear from 3 presenters today. We'll kick off with RecycleAll, who really are playing in that first at the start of that resource recovery chain, and they'll talk you through how they go about recovering materials from projects. From there, Vortair and SOS are sort of taking those materials and doing some really innovative stuff with concrete, with asphalt, but with other applications as well. And lastly, we'll catch up with Elecsome, who actually presented here a few years ago, and where they're up to with their glass solar panel recovery business and the products that are coming out of the output from that. We'll try to keep each presentation to about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll hear from Miles and Sabine, any questions they may have. For you in the audience, you won't be able to ask questions live, but you can pop them into the Q&A function in Zoom. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions for any of our presenters, please pop it in there. Make sure you address that presenter so they have the chance to go in after their presentation to answer your questions live. And after this session will be recorded. It'll be posted up on our ecologiQ YouTube, and a copy of the presentation will be sent out to everybody here as well. So without further delay, I'll now hand over to Damien from RecycleAll. So Damien, if you're there, the floor is yours. Let me know when you want to move to the next slide. So.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, ecologiQ, for having us along to talk to everybody about not about a recycled product that we can bring to the table, but actually collecting what has been designated as waste and taking that to become a recycled product that we can return to your construction sites. So, yeah, if we move a slide, please. So we are talking about building circular projects, and circular projects have to have the full closed loop. So the projects that we are currently servicing, we are collecting largely plastics, which have been lost to landfill historically. As soon as they enter that commingled skip bin, there is no more recovery of those. Doesn't matter what transfer station that goes to, they are too contaminated to be recovered successfully, and the processors are not interested in trying to clean cement or plaster off those. So what we are doing now is providing individual color-coded wheelie bins that collect the materials separately right at the source, various size bins that we can talk through to make sure that they're fit for every project. The verification at every bin is all about the data that we're collecting and the evidence that we're providing. Every time we collect a bit of material off one of the sites, we log it and we can report on that at the end of the month. Slide, please. We're probably all aware that 44% of Australia's landfill comes from the construction industry, and that has been that very linear approach of into one receptacle, collected and taken to a transfer station or a landfill, which ultimately all the plastics that we're talking about recovering are ending up in landfill at the moment. Slide. We've only been around for 2 years. The first 12 months we spent piloting and just making sure that our system works well, and that we have the tech that supports the data that we're collecting. So in the last 12 months, we've really sort of taken off, and our collections are really coming along strongly. The numbers you're seeing on the screen, we report in kilograms, in litres, and then CO2 emissions that are saved from diverting materials from landfill and what would have been virgin materials being manufactured. The weight, you'll notice, is not a huge amount, and that's because the vast majority of what we're collecting is lightweight products. And to put a picture in your minds, 300 kilograms of landfill is about half a pallet of bricks or an entire semi-trailer of polystyrene. So when we talk about the landfill and we ask the question, what does landfill care about how heavy the weight is the waste is that's coming there? But it does care about what the volume is. So we really want to change people's perception of what volume is more important than kilograms or tons of waste going to landfill. Slide, please. I'm not too sure if you click through this, whether it will take you through the individual ones here, if it's going to go straight to the next slide. We have a series of, yeah, we'll do that. Great, perfect. So this is the circular process and how it works with us. So you first download our app and set up an account. It sets you up a 30-day credit account, which is very simple and straightforward. And it then allows an admin to prepare a job sites and different users at different admin levels of each of those sites. Recycling bins get delivered. The bin stations are on site set up underneath the recycling station, so it's all very clearly identified. Source separated by the workers on site. It's collected by us as resources. We transfer that to processing partners who turn it back into new resin. It's manufactured into new products and returned to the construction site. The app, as I described, is a really straightforward and clean app. It's very, very simple to use. You can have a look at these slides later on. The individual screens are clearly what what each process requires: setting up users, setting up job sites, ordering your bins, and managing the bins that are on site. Slide. Very, very simple, right? We've said it. It's as easy as ordering a pizza, like Uber or whatever else. There is no reason why anybody can't pick up this app and just start using it straight away. Manages all your job sites across your business, each of the users, all your bins, your swaps, schedule them at the days you need them or want them changed over. It's all very, very straightforward. Every bin is individually barcoded and tracked. So as we drop the bin off, we scan the bin, we record the date and the time that it's delivered. And then when we collect them, scan the bin again, we record the volume, the weight, and we take a photograph of the contents to see that the bin is not contaminated and that the actual bin is full of the right product. These streams are always kept separated. There's no commingling of it. Brought back to our factories where we can consolidate that waste, and then we pass it to our processing partners, who then turn that into a new plastic product again. The reports that we can provide are very detailed, give you all the quantity of bins off the project by waste stream, the weight, the volume, and the associated emissions that you've saved. Slide. What you're currently dealing with is one skip, every material, every project. Everything goes into those skips. Everything is lost to landfill. Those skips have a lot of hidden charges. If you're on a council site, you're paying for a permit out the front of the job. $100 a day is not uncommon. All the surcharges you're getting hit with, diesel levies, all that. We don't charge any of those. It's a very, very simple, straightforward billing system and straightforward bin costs. You get source separated streams. You get reports that are clear and unambiguous. There's no guessing what went into those bins. There's no guessing what was recovered. It's all very, very accurate. Audit ready data. Now hand to your clients and be confident that what you're giving him is true and accurate. Next slide. Oh, it's the end of mine now. There should have been a couple more slides on there, but they're missing. That's okay. So basically, get started with RecycleAll. Download the app. Book your bins. We'll have the bins out to you straight away, and give us a go. If you're ever worried about the amount of plastic you're seeing going into those skips, we're your solution for that.
Apologies, Damien. I might hand over to our panelists for any questions. In the meantime, I'll double check if there's where the missing slides have gone, and happy for you to just catch the audience up. So I'll hand over to Miles. You had your camera off first. So Miles, did you have any questions for Damien?
Thank you, Doy, and thanks, Damien. I think I've seen something similar. Have you been on the M80RR job? I'm not sure if that's one of yours, but it's a
No, we're not yet, and I'll be curious to know, because as far as I'm aware, we're the only ones collecting source separated materials on construction sites in a plastic form. There's lots of people taking masonry and plaster and heavyweight products like that, but nobody doing the lightweight products.
Right. Okay. In terms of the plastic form, what range of products does it cover? Polystyrene and so on?
So we do soft plastics, PVC, polystyrene, HDPE, polypropylene, and we do a mixed bin of pallet strapping, which is both PP and PET.
Brilliant. Very good. No, I think it's wonderful because, as you said, it's critical, isn't it, to get that separation up front, because you've got different suppliers who will take different forms. What is the next step, or what is lacking in the users that you find hardest to get rid of now, or have you got suppliers who will take whatever you can recover?
There is triangle number 7 of your polymers, which is a mixed, so ABS and neoprene, nylon. They're all the sort of problematic plastics that aren't currently recovered by us or very readily processed anywhere. We would love for that to change. We'd love to add additional plastic streams, but the market, the offtake market isn't there yet, so the processors aren't there either. But at the moment, we've got very strong relationships with all our processors. Sustainability Victoria has done a fantastic job in building that manufacturing sector to use recycled polymers, so that offtake market is there for us. I'll just quickly touch on these last 2 slides here that Doy's put up here now. So we just ran some cost comparisons across projects that have run with and without recycling. These are real projects that were documented very well, and we actually had waste budgets that were proportionate to the project budget overall, and the net savings to return back to the builder was nearly 40% if they were using recycling on all 8 projects. What they've lost 14.5% by using no recycling straight to landfill, and what they've saved by using our recycling is 24.5%. There's one more slide there. That was the final one. So just about downloading the app to get started. We can order your bins straight away. And then whenever you need to book your swap overs, go back into the app and pick the bins that you've got on site that you'd like swapped over. Thanks, Di.
Thanks, Damien, and apologies there.
No problem.
I'll hand over to Sven. Sven, did you have any questions for Damien?
Yeah, first of all, Damien, absolutely brilliant. I think there's a real need for that. One thing I wanted to ask, is there a sort of a minimum reasonable size for the job that you would work for? Like, would it work for a domestic construction job or small commercial or?
Yeah, thanks, Sven. It's very adaptable and flexible. So some of our earliest adopters were your passive house builders or high performance homes, sustainably minded builders who really wanted to do the right thing. So we find that our 360 litre bins are very suitable for those residential projects. And then much larger projects are actually getting away with an 1100 litre bin. When you start talking about things like soft plastics, there's a lot of soft plastics that you can shove into an 1100 litre bin. If you throw them loose in top of a open top skip, they will blow out and they will actually end up down the street. Our closed litter bins prevent that from happening. We also find that on a larger commercial project, you can use the smaller bins to get direct to the source, wherever that waste is being generated, and recover it. And you can bring those smaller bins back to the larger ones and consolidate on a larger project.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's really good. I think that you say it's suitable for smaller scale jobs, because there's a lot of those going around, and sometimes walking past them, they're a bit of a mess, I think.
Absolutely.
Do you think the average construction site is capable of separating their plastics adequately to make this work, or how do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things we do when we deliver our bins and we put up our recycling station, we make it really evident that this is different. These are not battle-scarred wheelie bins that have been used on construction sites for years. They're all very clean. They're signed really clearly and they're coloured differently. We do a little induction and we educate people to identify plastics. Now, the most common plastics on a project are probably a polypropylene. Now, polypropylene, everyone's like, how do I know what's polypropylene? It's very, very simple. You pick up those clear plastic containers that all your fixings come in. You pick up a painter's bucket, you tip it upside down, and you have a look for that triangle. Everyone knows what recycling triangle is. Not many people know what the number inside it means. And it doesn't even matter what that number it is. You just need to match that number with the number that's on our bin. So 5 is polypropylene, which will be on every polypropylene product. And you just match that with the number 5 that's on the front of our bin.
Oh, excellent. Ah, thank you very much. Oh, really good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. Damien, there's 2 questions for you in the Q&A. So for the audience, once Damien's had a chance to answer those, they should pop up in the Q&A for you as well. You can see the answer to those questions. But 2 great questions about, one, operating where you operate, and secondly, around someone who might be after some feedstock. So Damien, I'll let you answer those questions, and thank you for telling us about RecycleAll. Hopefully that's inspired some of our council and or construction project partners that I know that are here on this webinar to reach out to Damien after this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Damien.
Thanks, Damien.
Now, moving on to our next presenter, I introduce to you Jeff Lang from Vortair. Jeff.
Great. Good morning, and thank you, ecologiQ, for the opportunity to present today. So maybe you can just jump to the next slide 1. Thanks, Jim. There we go. Technology is no longer the barrier. Implementation is. Victoria has committed to ambitious net zero targets, but the real opportunity now lies in how we deliver them through the Victorian Big Build. Over the next decade, the materials we've specified today will determine the embodied carbon of our infrastructure for the next 50 to 100 years. The good news is the technology already exists. Australia produces around 9.6 million tonnes of cement each year, while cement production contributes approximately 7% of global CO2 emissions. At the same time, we generate millions of tonnes of construction waste, stockpile around 20 million tonnes of glass waste, and continue importing high carbon clinker instead of maximising our own underutilised resources. One of the fastest ways to reduce embodied carbon is to replace clinker with supplementary cementitious materials. Yet Australia still doesn't publicly report national utilisation of these materials, making progress difficult to measure and even harder to accelerate. There's no longer a technology challenge. We already have the waste streams. We already have proven solutions. The technology and waste streams exist, the opportunity exists, but we need to improve the implementation. Next slide, thank you. The cost of inaction and the 242 billion opportunity. The Victorian Big Build represents one of the greatest opportunities Australia has ever had to reshape its construction industry. This isn't simply about reducing carbon, it's about building a sovereign manufacturing capability that converts Victorian waste into high-value construction materials while creating skilled jobs, reducing landfill and strengthening local supply chains. Today, we continue to stockpile hundreds of millions of tonnes of coal ash, generate millions of end-of-life tyres and landfill valuable construction materials, while importing high-carbon products that could increasingly be replaced with locally manufactured alternatives. The opportunity is another recycling program. It's advanced manufacturing. Government has already invested in research, innovation and demonstration projects. Industry has validated the science. Companies like Vortair have demonstrated commercial technologies capable of converting these waste streams into engineered construction materials. Now the opportunity is to connect those proven technologies with procurement. If the Victorian Big Build specifies low embodied carbon materials, industry will invest, manufacturers will scale and new supply chains will emerge. This is how Victoria can lead Australia, not simply by setting targets, but by using procurement to build the circular construction industry of the future. Next slide, thank you. So now I'll talk a little bit about Vortair. So validation is completed, the solution already exists. So Vortair is not presenting another concept requiring years of research. We're demonstrating technology that has already been validated across multiple waste streams with direct application to concrete, roads and civil infrastructure. Using our Australian patented autonomous milling platform, Vortair successfully processed recycled glass, fly ash, calcined clay, tire-derived materials, solar panels, and more recently, wind turbine blades into engineered material streams suitable for circular construction applications. These materials can replace virgin resources, reduce landfill and create significantly greater economic value than disposal. More importantly, they help solve one of the biggest contributors to embodied carbon. Clinker in concrete and cement represents approximately 90 to 95% of cement's CO2 footprint. Every 10% reduction in clinker delivers around 8 to 9% reduction in cement emissions. By producing highly reactive supplementary cementitious materials from waste resources, Vortair enables meaningful clinker replacement while maintaining concrete performance. The technology has been validated, the commercial opportunity is clear. What Victoria needs now is an implementation pathway that allows these proven solutions to become standard practice across the Big Build. Next slide, thank you. Vortair tyre recycling plant, turning cost into profit. The tyre industry has never lacked recycling technology. What it has lacked is its commercial economics. Vortair changes that by transforming pyrolysis char from low-value byproduct from tyres getting put into high-value recovered carbon black, creating the revenue stream that underpins the economics of the entire pyrolysis plant. Combined with recovered steel, pyrolysis oil and syngas used to power part of the facility, every material stream generates value rather than waste. This demonstrates a broader point. Circular economy technology must compete commercially, not just environmentally. The same Vortair platform that creates value from tyres also processes recycled glass, fly ash and calcined clay into premium construction materials for low carbon concrete. It demonstrates that circular manufacturing is not simply about diverting waste into landfill, it's about creating profitable industries that support the Victorian Big Build while reducing embodied carbon and in strengthening sovereign manufacturing capability. Next slide, thank you. So this is our ambitious put forward we're doing here. So we're proposing that the opportunity for circular infrastructure materials and embodied carbon solution for concrete. This is where Vortair directly supports Victoria's net zero infrastructure objectives. Our patented milling technology converts waste glass, fly ash and calcined clay into highly reactive supplementary cementitious materials capable of replacing a significant proportion of cement clinker. Why is this important? Because clinker is responsible for around 90 to 95% of cement CO2 footprint. Every 10% reduction in clinker delivers approximately 8 to 9% reduction in cement emission. Independent validation has demonstrated that Vortair can produce engineered materials suitable for clinker replacement, with studies indicating the potential to reduce embodied carbon in concrete by up to 30 to 40% depending on the mix design. This is much bigger than concrete. The same milling platform processes recycled glass, biomass from agriculture, solar panels, and recently the wind turbine blade and other industrial waste streams into premium engineered material. Instead of treating these materials as landfill liabilities, Vortair converts them into valuable manufacturing inputs that strengthens local supply chain, reduces imported construction material, and support Victoria's transition to a circular economy. This is advanced manufacturing delivering both economic and environmental outcomes. So next slide, government. Government holds the solution. The levers already exist. So just back one slide, sorry. That's it. If the technology has been proven, why isn't it being implemented? Because the barrier is no longer technical, it is procurement. Government has invested in research, universities have validated the science, industry has completed successful demonstration, yet major infrastructure projects often continue specifically with traditional materials because they are familiar, easy to approve, and perceived as lower risk. That's the implementation gap. Fortunately, government already controls the solution. Through procurement policy, engineering specifications, recycled content, targets, embodied carbon reporting and demonstration projects, government can create the market confidence needed for circular materials to become the standard practice. The Victorian Big Build provides exactly that opportunity. Every major project awarded over the next decade can help establish new supply chains, accelerate advanced manufacturing, and reduce embodied carbon across Victoria's infrastructure network. Government doesn't need to invent new technology. It simply needs to use the procurement power it already has to implement technologies that are already proven. So the Victorian Circular Infrastructure Centre. This brings me to our final proposal. The Victorian Circular Infrastructure Centre is designed to become Australia's first implementation platform for circular construction materials. It's not another research centre. It is the missing link between proven technology and commercial deployment. Using validated technologies such as Vortair, the centre will enable government, industry and research organisations to work together to validate materials at commercial scale, develop engineering specifications, demonstrate infrastructure performance and build procurement confidence. The objective is straightforward: move proven technology out of laboratories into the roads, into bridges, rails, schools and hospitals, delivering through the Victorian Big Build. This centre, we believe, is the combination of private and government interests. The centre will strengthen sovereign manufacturing, accelerate commercialisation, support regional jobs, and establish secure Victoria supply chains for low carbon construction materials. Rather than exporting Australian innovation, Victoria has the opportunity to manufacture and deploy it here first. That is how implementation becomes economic development. So the final thing here, everything we've just discussed today leads into one conclusion. Victoria has a once in a generation opportunity to use the Big Build to create Australian first circular construction materials industry. The economic benefits are significant: new manufacturing investment, regional employment, reduced imports and stronger sovereign supply chains. The environmental benefits are equally compelling: lower embodied carbon, greater resource recovery, less landfill and practical pathways to achieving net zero infrastructure. Strategically, Victoria can position itself as Australia's leader in circular infrastructure by building local capability rather than relying on imported technology and materials. Vortair has demonstrated that technology already exists. The Victorian Circular Infrastructure Centre could provide that implementation platform. The Victorian Big Build provides the market opportunity. Together, they create a practical pathway for Victoria to transform waste into world-class construction materials while building a globally competitive advanced manufacturing sector. The question is no longer whether these technologies work. The question is whether Victoria chooses to implement them while the opportunity is in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I wish I could write checks, but not something that we have the power to do. But I think the idea of a circular implementation centre would be wonderful, and would be happy to take up residency there if such a centre could come to fruition. I'll hand over to Sven first this time. Sven, do you have any opening questions for Jeff?
Couple of questions, couple of comments. First of all, Jeff, it's just as well that you're a good speaker, because boy, have you got a job. There's probably a lot of education to be done on that front.
Yes.
You gave some large figures for the carbon emissions for cement produced in Australia, and I reckon there's probably quite a lot more of cement that is imported into Australia. So where the emissions have been done elsewhere, but still we use the cement here.
Yes.
With as far as concrete's concerned, with the supplementary cementitious materials, it's probably a lower threshold for non-structural concrete from our side,
Yes.
maybe as an entry point. But when it comes to registered concrete mixes for structural applications, we're probably 9 kinds of conservative. Thinking of a 100-year design life and so on. So that's not to say we should shy away from it. It's just pointing out what has probably been obvious to you.
Yes. So we have worked with a few different universities and groups relative to this bit, so we understand some of those problems. Obviously, you got to fit for purpose is the way we look at it. Not all recycled materials will fit every form of concrete required, but we also know where there's opportunity to improve that area, and it's like everything requires baby steps. I've had a background in defence and aerospace, so I understand what it's like to get a new product or new material into the marketplace. But I think, look, the public wants this change. Everyone's supportive of this change. It's really just making that step from when we look at new materials and we validate it, how do we move them into that procurement, into implementation? So I think for us, that's really where we see it's a combination of private industry working with government to build bigger centres, bigger applications. One of the things we find with industry, it's not so much as the reluctance, there's a risk profile as far as changing new materials and dealing with the unknowns. I think by having a centre like this allows us to de-risk those aspects getting into the marketplace without sort of challenging any of the existing status quo, but sort of how we find that way of steady implementation into the future.
Fair enough. And Jeff, can I just ask that machine in your background, and you mentioned, is there really one platform that deals with everything, like with tires and glass and solar panels, and is there one kind of technology here?
Yeah, so it's the basic milling technology. So when we think of a mill, they're normally mechanical. You have blades hitting material. This works like what we call autonomous. So in other words, the material smashes into itself and breaks apart that way. So it's not like an air jet mill. It's slightly more different than that area. But basically, the material spins at a very high rate in the air vortex, hits itself and breaks into smaller materials. We do have a lot of digital control about that particle size and our feed put. We are doing a lot of work at the moment with big food processors at the moment, taking their side streams of waste, turning them into valuable product. Recently, we won a big award in Europe for the best new protein innovation, where we take food waste from soybeans, so forth like that, turn it into high protein powders. But look, the technology works across a lot of different sectors, and I think our main focus is food is a big one for us. How do we stop a lot of the food waste going to landfill? But we also see the whole area around building a huge opportunity around glass waste and other waste materials that are very hard to process. So we found a little niche with our technology at Vortair, being able to process some of these very difficult materials. And we've got a good project coming up around wind turbine blades, where we've successfully been able to process them into different, from that material, break that down into its base, fiberglass, fibres, and also pull the urethane and wood out as well. So very promising where this technology can go. And like we said, it does so many capability across different industry sectors, but our main sector is in the building industry, in food processing as well.
Oh, excellent. Fascinating. Looking forward to hearing more from you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. Over to Miles. And if I might just comment, for me, I found it interesting. Jeff let us know that your technology is being used in the recent calcine claim production as well. So, which is a piece of work that Miles has been leading on behalf of the state. But I'll let Miles, open with your questions.
Yeah, look, that's great stuff, Jeff, and I love that. More than a vision, I think the Victorian that centre is something that there are similar schemes or similar ideas have been actually floated around already. So I think there's an appetite to discuss that further, and we'll take that offline because it's as you said, it's a huge topic, and as Sven indicated, it's got multiple facets that need to be resolved. But it's exactly, you're dead right, it's exactly what we need. And to give you some sort of recent updates, DDP and VEDA have created under ecologiQ a low carbon concrete working group that's just stood up as a more official low carbon concrete working group than one we started about 3 or 4 years ago. And this is exactly the sort of thing we would like to talk to the industry about, because you're dead right, it's what's going to make the difference between getting a real change or just keep doing trials and not getting where we need to get to. So really like what you're doing, and be really interested to dig deeper into how far you've gone with this and what's the next step. So good stuff. And you're dead right, the technology, and be really interested to know a bit about the calcine clay. It's very dear to my heart. So are you able to give some details on what?
Yeah, so we did a couple of different projects. One of the ones, we got some contaminated calcine clay that went through a pyrolysis process first, and then we took that, and then basically the calcine clay that came out the other end that was decontaminated of some heavy metals, we then processed that into a finer material. And the ability of our technology with the calcine clay is the ability to do slightly more drying as well as milling simultaneously. So that allows us to control the moisture content you would like, but also the particle size you'd like to. So once we can get into those controlling mechanisms, it opens up a lot more avenue for getting the right specific mix for different applications.
Yeah, and that brings together a couple of other things that we're interested in is the on-site reuse of construction waste, soils and things. As we know, Melbourne's nicely covered with clay soils, and every time we dig it up, we send it off to landfill, we're losing an opportunity to turn it into something better. So look, we could keep on talking, but I noticed Doi cleverly set this session up to be cut off so everyone can go off and watch the Socceroos. I don't know if that was planned, Doi, or whether that was just by chance. But Jeff, great to know. Love what you're doing, and we'll have some further conversations. So thank you.
Thank you, Miles, and look forward to catching up. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Now I invite, I think, Brad and Scott. From Brad, just yourself today?
No, Scott should be there. Scott will do the presentation.
Just logging on now. So thanks, Doi, and great stuff there with what you're doing there, Jeff, with Vortair, and also Damien with RecycleAll. It's great to see that's happening. So we've got a company called Societal Outcome Solutions. We're a Melbourne-based or Victorian-based certified social enterprise. We support government as well as federal, state and local, as well as tier 1 contractors meet many of the ESG requirements that are needing to be met for the delivery of government projects. And obviously just a little bit of a brief as to what SOS does there on the opening page. What we have done is we've partnered with a group called Sustainable Concrete Group, which is a young group of entrepreneurs who have supported SOS in aggregating a number of different products to be used in concrete. As we all know, concrete's the second largest used product in the world next to water, and obviously the carbons discussions have already been well covered off just a moment ago. So when we look at what Vortair's doing, in the same way, SCG has got a process where they're recycling glass. In fact, I might get you, Doi, if you could just go to the second slide, if you wouldn't mind. So we basically have 3 or 4 different products that are currently being used, and again, all directed around reducing the carbon footprint of concrete. They've developed a product called ecologiQ, which is at this stage just going through certification as a silica fume replacement. currently has some data tests that's come back with a chloride content of 0.004, so extremely low there, and just going through the processes for the AS certification at the moment. And also a recycled 100% or 80% recycled content for Resonate, which is again both soft and hard plastics that would have been going to landfill, being reused and modified to replace aggregate in the concrete. And the plastic, Brad Scott's one of the founders and owners of Resonate. He will give a further breakdown on that shortly. So we have those two products, as well as Zymex, which is a new product coming to market at the moment, which has also been certified by Boral. And it is a cement additive that reduces the volume of cement needed to achieve the desired MPA mix. And that reduction is as much as 15 to 20% reduction of cement needed. And it works exceptionally well with slag and also calcined clay, which we were just talking about a moment ago. So part of what SOS does is really work with collaborative relationships with Australian-owned companies and innovation. So it's great to see other people with similar passions, because waste is a massive issue in every country. So whatever we are initiating here in Australia will no doubt be adopted into other countries very quickly. I might go through to the next slide, Doy. So the EcoFume, as you can see here, and again, very similar to what the product is that Vortair is also producing. One additional benefit that they're doing here with this particular technology is using a process where they can actually modify desert sand. And as we know, desert sand is too round in its format to be used in concrete application. That process, in the same way as they're crushing glass into a suitable format, as you can see there, for sand replacement, that can also be used for desert sand. Not necessarily as relevant in Australia, some parts perhaps, but obviously in countries such as the UAE or regions such as the UAE, it's highly relevant. Next slide. Resonate, I might hand to you, Brad, if you would, and perhaps just to run through some of the products, leachate and all of the other bits and pieces with that. That'd be terrific.
Yeah, so Resonate's an aggregate replacement. It's a synthetic aggregate we're making, and out of hard and soft plastics and all types of resins. So I note Damien before from RecycleAll said he didn't have an off-taker for the 7 miscellaneous ABS, that sort of plastics. We can take all of that. And we can make it into this synthetic aggregate. It's more a mineral polymer when we're finished than a plastic, if you like. So we're cutting off the pathways to microplastics and to leachate, which means that when this aggregate is used as an aggregate in the concrete, down the track, when it's at the end of life and you're recycling aggregate or your asphalt, this is a clean aggregate. So from that point forward, if you like, once it's in the cementitious matrix or into the asphalt matrix, it's basically infinitely recyclable as an aggregate. So it can continually be recycled that way. So it's a full circular product, which is why I was very excited to get my hands on it. It's been in Australia for a couple of years. It was introduced as a pilot in 2023-24. Never was able to commercialise, and we've come in with Sustainable Concrete Group and Transmutation to take this over and get this commercialised because it's such a great product. So basically all the soft plastic collection in your Woolies, your Coles, your Aldis, the program firing back up, we will be an off-taker for that. We'll be an off-taker for e-waste plastic and for the type 7 resins, miscellaneous, all of the stuff that currently doesn't have a home in the recycling infrastructure. We can take, and then our off-takers is the concrete and the asphalt industry. Back to you, Scotty.
Also, just on that, on Resonate, just perhaps touching that with the product in there, it can be fully recycled into perpetuity. So when I might get you to give a bit of background on the recycling and perhaps just obviously the leachate as well.
Yeah, we have scientific reports on the leachate and the microplastic scenario. So when you're recycling this as an aggregate going forward, You don't have restrictions, if you like, as you would if you had plastic in concrete. So you can't put that near waterways and other such things because it's a contaminated aggregate. This is not a contaminated aggregate. It's just an aggregate. So because we've cut those pathways off in the plastic to those two things, there's no contamination, if you like, going forward. It's just an aggregate.
Thanks, Brad. And next slide, please, Toy. Okay, so Zymex is an interesting one because we will have a lot of data released through a NATA-approved lab here in Victoria very shortly. But to give some an idea is that typically we all become very good corporate citizens as long as it doesn't cost us money. So what we have been working extremely hard on is to find an end-to-end solution for the contractors to deliver concrete to site at a cost that is going to be comparable, if not less expensive than current methods, which is what we are and will be delivering. There's every chance that you could see, particularly in horizontal concrete applications, cost reductions or cost savings of at least 10%. And we do so through a couple of different methods, whilst also then meeting all of the environmental and the social procurement aspect of these products. Zymex, as I mentioned before, uses roughly 15 to 20% in the higher mixed designs. If we're talking 40, 50 MPa mixed designs, then it's upwards of a 20% savings. The product is less expensive than cement, and it is still obviously then achieving the desired MPa results. It also uses 7% less water, which again is another ESG or environmental compliance tick. And as a result of being less expensive than cement, we've partnered that with the delivery model for both using Resonate's aggregate as well as a recycled glass, so that you are getting closer to the end-to-end pricing that you're currently, or like-for-like pricing as to what you're currently experiencing. If we go to the next slide, and the final piece of the puzzle is, again, touching on price. I don't envy contractors delivering projects that are tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and of course the margins are incredibly tight. And obviously with what we've gone through recently, whether it be COVID or now the fuel crisis, the increased pricing of products for the builders is a massive issue. The product here is SCG. We're releasing a new product which has had extensive global use. It's manufactured here in Victoria. 100% recycled HDPE plastic. So what was formerly large plumbing piping, stormwater piping are being recycled into this product. We're able to use a matting where we will incorporate a mixed design incorporating the glass, the Resonate product with recycled plastic to replacing 15 to 20% of the aggregate. That Resonate can have aggregate size from 3 mil up to 20 mil, so depending on the applications. And then with the Zymex with less cement, we are then able to use, for example, here, a matting that is 48 millimetres in thickness. We can cover that with approximately 20 to 30 millimetres of concrete over the top, and per square metre end up having quite literally a 10-tonne load capacity per square metre. As a result, if we were looking at factory floors at between 200 and 350 mil thick, depending on the need, this then eliminates the need for steel Rio being used. And if we are pouring, for example, at the upper limit, 90 mil or 100 mil of concrete in comparison to 200 mil, you can see very quickly a savings that is going to come about as a result of that. So we SOS and SCG control pretty much the whole supply chain, and we're able to give a turnkey solution that meets really all of the contractual obligations that organisations for contractors are needing to meet for the government projects, or what VETA would be hoping to achieve in terms of recycled content and as well as the carbon reduction of the concrete. So that's pretty much it, Doy. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Bradley. I I did catch, I think recently, Channel 9 had featured your product as calling it the world's greenest concrete. So bit of fun fact, anyone who wants to chase that down. And I thought it'd be worthwhile mentioning for Resonate that you do have an international EPD, and it's still on the cards to get that for Australia as well. I know that for many of the sustainability people on the call today, that's sort of the the certification and the accreditation that they're looking for when it comes to these sorts of products. But I'll hand over to Miles perhaps with any opening remarks.
Thanks, Dwayne, and thanks, Scott and Brad, and good to see you again. So,
thank you.
As you know, very much in like what you're doing, and I love the way you're bringing together these different material solutions and taking it to another level as far as an integrated recycle solution, a low carbon recycle solution, which is great. In terms of that product that you're launching, which is great, what we can obviously assist at VEDA by getting it installed on projects at first as trials and then proving it up. But obviously the big market's going to be commercial warehouses, centres, and so on. Have you started exploring that market? And obviously one of the interesting things is for people like Woolworths who create, who produce a lot of the plastic waste. Are they showing any interest, or is that something we can assist with as having conversations?
Look, actually, Miles at Doy's been incredibly supportive. So we're actually talking with I probably shouldn't mention the contractor's name, but we are looking at a government project at the moment, which involves VEDA for a carve out of I think 5 kilometres of footpath or thereabouts, bike paths and crossovers. So that's in line at the moment, and the contractor has been extremely supportive of it for obvious reasons, because everyone's trying to achieve not only their environmental targets but also their social procurement. So everything we are delivering can be socially procured through SOS as a certified social enterprise, and so we're meeting all of the ESD, and then exactly what you just touched on, and really also what Jeff Lang was talking about from Vortair is having government being able to open up some trial projects to demonstrate the fact that it's going to do what we are saying it's going to do. And naturally, government has to be conservative. The contractors are conservative. The concrete industry is conservative. So, but at some point, we put the government's put the framework in place to trial these. Now we are literally at the pointy end of the stick to be able to put them out there in the marketplace and demonstrate that they work.
Yeah.
So we've got one project.
Sorry, go.
One project with VEDA, and then we have got a discussion commenced in, like Amazon had partnered with Meta, for example, globally to try and deliver, a much lower concrete, carbon footprint concrete. So we've got those discussions happening at the moment.
Yeah, and I can see with some data centres and things that might have some other advantages in terms of insulation.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, that's great stuff, and really. And I think one of the things I think people on the call and hopefully people are starting to see is as we're using carbon as the incentive, we're actually finding we can come up with better solutions. So sometimes it's not, the risk is actually being lessened by some of these innovations. It's just a question of getting the data to show that, so that we're not seeing as taking a step backward in quality. We're actually producing things that are more going to actually work better than the old solution. So that's exciting. So thanks for that, Sven. Yeah.
Yes, Scott, very good stuff. One thing I wanted to ask with the EcoFume, did I hear you right that there's scope for turning desert sand, as you said, into sand that would be suitable for concrete? Or
yeah, correct. Yeah. So SCG's process, so they've actually had very strong interest, obviously, throughout the UAE for obvious reasons. So I think they're looking at blending a combination of 50% desert sand with 50% recycled glass to replace, conventional sand.
Yeah, that's excellent, because we are running tight on sand already. So I think anything that opens up new horizons there would be very useful. Yeah.
I think the silica fume replacement is also a really interesting one. So we should have some more news on that, I would think, in the next 3 weeks.
Oh, excellent. And Brad, nice to see you again.
How are you, Sven?
Very good. Brad, I wanted to ask with the Resonate, is there scope for tailoring the aggregate to how should I say it, to make it as good as it needs to be, but not a lot better, and have some potential economic savings there?
Yeah, so I guess two things there is we're happy to negotiate, I suppose, on larger sort of projects and stuff as well. But also with the combination, like the 4 products and even the 3 products used together, we get price parity, if not even a bit of a saving. So that's the idea of some of those products are more expensive, some of those are less expensive. So by putting them all together, we get that price parity as opposed to just putting them all out in the market on their own. So that's really one of the tactics here is you get a lot better product, but you also can get that price parity in the marketplace as well.
No, that's excellent if there's scope for that, because with virgin quarry materials, we sometimes face the situation that there's really high quality material, and that should be put to use for aggregate, and then it's used, in a class 3 under a footpath or something, which is a bit of a waste of a very limited resource. So I'm pleased to hear that there's scope for that, Brad.
I think that's probably one of the key elements here is collaboration. The one thing that I've found by aggregating different technologies and pulling it all together, you look at the end result for a contractor is significant. If all of a sudden we're able to use all of the recycled product, and as Brett was just touching on, you're saving money in some areas and costing more in others. But when you look at the total delivery, if we suddenly pouring a slab for a commercial application that is less than 100 mil in thickness, where it might be a 350 mil planned slab or a 250 mil planned slab, you think of the carbon footprint in moving that amount of soil in order to put the make provision for the laying of the slab up front. There's so many different touch points of environmental benefit and carbon reduction the whole way through. And of course, that's all time. Time is money. Again, it has to be delivered through financial savings to the contractor, because no one's really interested in paying 10% more or 5% more. It needs to be like for like or less expensive. And that's really what we are doing through supplying all of this as a complete package rather than just individually.
Sounds like you're definitely onto something there, I think.
I guess just the other thing to quickly add is that's why we say it's the greenest concrete, because we're not just the end point for the majors is putting a bit of slag and fly ash in and maybe some water reduction. That's their end point. That's where we start, and then we add another couple of layers on top.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Scott. And I hope that's inspired some people in the audience. I know, again, we've got councils, we've got different construction sectors. I think we have water corporations here in the audience. So to reach out to you, find out more about as you know, I call it the maxi bond mix with with having the trifecta of recycled materials, alternative cements, as well as reducing the amount of cement that goes in there. So I think it's a fantastic product, and we're looking forward to seeing it get some legs maybe on Vita and then expanding to other sectors. So there's a question for you in the Q&A, so feel free to hop in there and answer those live. Now, I now hand over to Lily Rose to take us through our last segment, and I invite, I'll see if you're there on the line, Hamza from Elecsome, to come and provide us an update with where are they now with what you've been up to at Elecsome. Lily Rose, over to you.
Thanks so much, Doi. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Lily Rose. I'm a Senior Industry Advisor at ecologiQ, and I'm here today with Dr. Hamza, who is the Head of Research and Development at Elecsome, for our Where Are They Now segment, which is basically an opportunity for us to check in with a previous pitcher at one of our innovation showcases and check in with them and see what's been going on since they pitched, key milestones, new products, etc. So Dr. Hamza is here. He has a short presentation for you to take you over some of those key details, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A at the end. So Dr. Hamza, I'll hand on over to you to take us over your updates.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for ecologiQ team for organizing this webinar, and this is the opportunity for us to provide our last updates about Elecsome. Many of you already know the story of Elecsome, and so today I'd like to focus on where we are now. After years of research, development, and pilot project, now we reached an important milestone. Our facility in Kilmeny, it's now fully operational and ready to supply high quality, recovered materials to support Victoria's big build and state's circular economy. Next slide, please. Yeah, every year, more solar panels reach to the end of their lives and creating a growing waste challenges. At Elecsome, we see this challenge as an opportunity. Instead of sending, all of solar panels to landfill, we recover valuable materials and return them to local industries, creating a truly circular solution for Australia and Victoria. Next slide, please. Here is a photo of our site, and we have successfully commissioned our, commercial processing line and are now processing thousands of solar panels. And at the moment, we have almost more than 80,000 solar panels in our Kilmeny site. They are under processing, and our process, efficiently separates and recovers like glass, aluminium, coppers, and producing clean materials streams that can be supplied back to Australia manufacturing and infrastructure projects. And in the next slide, I just showing you the first step, how we can deframe aluminium frames and then make ready solar panels for recycling. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, here there is a machine you can see. It's deframing aluminium frame, and at the moment we are, selling our aluminium recovered, copper, and glass as a solar credits. In the next slides, I'm gonna talk a bit about them. Okay. As you know, our highest volume product is recovered glass sand, named as solar credits. You already have heard about it. And if you one click, we can see our products, commercial product package. Yeah, this is our solar credit. With a practical production capacity of around 40 tons per day, we are ready to support Victoria's recycled first policy, by supplying recycled material for roads, for civil and infrastructure projects. And one example, this is our solar credit product, which is already being used in Melbourne's Northeast Link project. And we are proud of this product. And let's go to the next slide. Yeah, and we didn't stick to the just aluminium, glass, and these things. We moved to, beyond the glass, and glass is only in the beginning. And we are also advancing our recovery process for critical materials, including silicon and silver, and move towards, complete zero waste solution for every solar panel that we are processing. Here you can see, if you click on a slide, please. Here you can see our first attempt, first successful silver recovery trial from our end-of-life solar panels, and it's demonstrating the next step in recovering higher value materials. We optimized our methods by reaching more than 90% of recovery rates, and with 99.99% of purity of silver, which is great for our project. And let's go to the next slide, please. And yeah, to conclude, Elecsome is ready for the next stage. We are looking to work with infrastructure partners, contractors, and asset owners who share our visions with a circular economy. And all in all, together, we can transform end-of-life solar panels into valuable resources that help build Australia's future. And, I just kept slides so minimal and so brief. And thanks for this opportunity to sharing with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamza.
No,
Great presentation. Great to hear how things have been progressing with Elecsome. I find the silver and silicone recovery work that you're doing so fascinating and really interesting to get a glimpse at what that process has looked like. So thank you so much for sharing. So since presenting at the Innovation Showcase, obviously the silver and silicone recovery work has been a huge milestone.
yeah.
Um, are there any other sort of key milestones or projects that Elecsome has worked on?
My internet connection is breaking up. Can you hear me properly?
Oh, yes, you're okay on my end. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Okay. Since the last innovation showcase that we had, we have continued making strong progress, particularly in recovering silver. And the recent milestone for us was securing an RNI grant, Australian Renewable Energy, to support our silver recovery pilot project. It's a great recognition to the work we have been doing and the potential of this technology in the future.
Fantastic. So congrats on the grant. That's huge.
Thank you.
So for people in the audience today, what would you say your key messaging and offerings are, and how can they engage with you and help you?
Mm. Good question. Our message is simple and clear. We are ready to collaborate. We are looking to partner with councils, infrastructures, contractors, asset holders and owners, and industry, to recycling and upcycling end-of-life solar panels and return those materials, valuable materials, back to local project again.
Yeah, I mean, key thing,
Yep,
collaboration and
exactly.
collaborating with different partners, different areas. And I think there's such a great circular story here where you can recover the materials created into Solarcrete and then supply the product back to site, which is just a lovely circular story. Um, so touching on that, I know sometimes collaboration or navigating the space can be a little bit challenging. Have you experienced any challenges within industry, and how did you go about navigating those?
Like many companies developing new technology and these things, one of our biggest challenges has been, navigating the approval process, testing, certification, compliances, and, regulatory requirements. And all of them are essential. At the moment, they can be, time consuming and expensive. This is the biggest challenges that we have faced in our glass recovery, silver recovery, and everything.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone there. I think a
No.
lot of people experience similar things.
Yeah, that's it.
And fantastic. For the final question, we love to end with a little bit of blue sky thinking for this segment. So, what would you like to see within industry within the next 5 years?
To be honest, I'd like to see more long-term thinking, not just 5 years, maybe much more than that. As you know, Australia is installing millions of solar panels these days, but every one of those panels will eventually reach end of its life. And if we start planning for that now, through our recycling infrastructures, collection system, and product stewardship, we can avoid, creating a much bigger waste problem and challenges in the future. We have planned for them from now, and it would be our, future vision and plan.
A fantastic answer to that question. I think, yeah, across industry, everyone could benefit from a lot more long-term thinking
Yep.
in our day-to-day. Thank you so much again for your time, Dr. Hamza. It's been fantastic to catch up with you and Elecsome to see what the key milestones have been. It's great to have you back. That concludes the Where Are They Now segment, so I'll pass you back on to Doi. Thanks, Doi.
Thanks, Lily Rose. Question for you, Dr. Hamza. That we do have a question that's come in the Q&A from the audience. Happy to answer this one live if we read it out loud.
Yeah. I can't see in chat room. Let me have a look.
It's in the Q&A. It's in the Q&A, not chat room. But I'll ask live if you're happy to answer it. So the question here is from Sunil.
Yep.
Thank you, Hamza, for your excellent presentation. Achieving over 90% metal recovery at a large scale is impressive. It's quite challenging in industrial operations. I was particularly interested in your selective leaching process. Could you please share more details about how you achieve such high selectivity while maintaining this level of recovery?
I would happy to talk about more details about our method, but as you know, because of IP and confidential things, I can't share more details about our method.
Yep.
And yeah, unfortunately, I can't. Sorry for that. It's a
Not a
great
problem.
question because because of the results, it's interesting and everyone want to know how come. But yeah, unfortunately, because of our IP, and I can't give more details more than this. I'm so sorry for that.
Yep. No problem. So I think I'd encourage you to reach out to Dr. Hamza after this, because again, we'll be sharing everyone's presentations and contact details.
Yeah, because of, but in general, I can say we are going through hydrometallurgy, process and recovering silver, but I can't share more than this. Yeah, to see how it goes, maybe we can, collaborate with audiences and others.
Fantastic, thank you. And that brings us to our formal presentations for today. So I hope you've enjoyed today's innovation showcase, but please reach out to us. So if a few things you can do from here. Firstly, we do have a free knowledge hub for anyone who already doesn't have access to that. That's a platform where you can have access to case studies, reference guides, recordings of the events like this, and others are all uploaded there. For access to that, just reach out to us at ecologic@beta.vic.gov.au. And the other thing is next month we'll be returning with a slightly different series. Our Lunch and Learns return. We'll be catching up with the Suburban Rail Loop projects, Northeast Link, as well as Vita Rail with what they're doing in terms of calcined clay, recycled other recycled innovations, and recycled plastic noise walls. So if you're interested, please come back. Those will kick off again mid-July. And again, I will be sending this out after this. Please join me in thanking our presenters and panelists for today's showcase. Hope you got something out of it, and I hope we've encouraged you to reach out to one another and collaborate, because without that, I don't think we'll get to where we want to see in terms of that circular economy and sustainability. So thanks again for coming to today's showcase, and enjoy the rest of your day.